After Treaty of Vienna, secret societies were formed by revolutionaries. These revolutionaries' aim was spread idea of nationalism, oppose monarchy, and they wanted freedom and end autocratic rule. Then they need nation state, that means common culture, language, tradition, and history. Giuseppe Mazzini, an Italian revolutionary, became a member of the secret society of the Carbonari. He formed two secret societies in Young Italy in Marseille and Europe in Bern. He believed in unification of Italy. He believed that God had intended nations to be the natural units of mankind. And conservative regimes tried to consolidate their power, liberalism and nationalism came to be increasingly associated with revolution in many regions of Europe, such as the Italian and German states, the provinces of the Ottoman Empire, Ireland and Poland. These revolutions were led by the liberal nationalists belonging to the educated middle class elite, among whom were professors, school teachers, clerks, and members of the commercial middle classes. So the first upheaval took place in France in July 1830. The Bourbon kings, who had been restored to power during the conservative reaction after 1815, that means after Napoleon's entry in France, restored the monarchy form of government. They were now overthrown by liberal revolutionaries who installed a constitutional monarchy with Louis Philippe as its head. When France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold. The July Revolution sparked an uprising in Brussels which led to Belgium breaking away from United Kingdom of Netherlands, because in Brussels also people were under control of United Kingdom of Netherlands. They also need freedom, liberalism, nation state. Next one, Greek Revolution. Greece had been part of Ottoman Empire since the 15th century. The growth of revolutionary nationalism in Europe sparked off a struggle for independence amongst the Greeks, which began in 1821. Nationalists in Greece got support from other Greeks living in exile and also from many Western Europeans who had sympathies for ancient Greek culture. And also poets and artists also supported then European civilization and mobilized public opinion to support its struggle against a Muslim empire. The English poet Lord Byron organized funds and later went to fight in the war, where he died of fever in 1824. Finally, the Treaty of Constantinople of 1832 recognized Greece as an independent nation. The development of nationalism did not come about only through wars and territorial expansions. Culture played an important role in creating the idea of the nation. Art and poetry, stories, and music helped express and shape nationalist feeling. Let us look at Romanticism, a culture movement which sought to develop a particular form of nationalistic sentiments. National feelings were kept alive through music and languages. Romantics were through folk song, folk poetry, and folk dances that the true spirit of the nation. Famous German philosopher Johann Gottfried also developed nationalism feeling through folk songs and folk dances. End of 18th century, language too played an important role in developing nationalist sentiment. Based on Treaty of Vienna 1815, Russia got Poland. After Russian occupation, the Polish language was forced out of schools and the Russian language was imposed everywhere. During that time, Russia, Prussia, Austria were great powers. After that, in 1831, an armed rebellion against Russian rule took place, which was ultimately crushed. Following this, many members of the clergy in Poland began to use language as a weapon of national resistance. Polish was used for church gatherings and all religious instructions. As a result, a large number of priests and bishops were put in jail or sent to Siberia by the Russian authorities as punishment for their refusal to preach in Russian. Siberia, very cold place. So the use of Polish came to be seen as a symbol of the struggle against Russian dominance. In 1830s, there were years of great economic hardship in Europe. The first half of the 19th century saw an enormous increase in population. In most countries, there were more seekers of jobs than employment. Population from rural areas migrated to the cities to live in overcrowded slums. There were also food shortage and widespread unemployment brought the population to Paris out on the roads. So at last, National Assembly proclaimed a republic, granted suffrage to all adult males above 21, and guaranteed the right to work. What were the changes made by National Assembly? Right to vote and right to work. In 1845, weavers in Silesia had led a revolt against contractors who supplied them raw materials and gave them orders for finished textile, and they demanded for payment decreased. On 4th June 1845, a large crowd of weavers emerged from their homes and marched towards the mansion of their contractors, demanding higher wages. The contractors fled with his family to a neighboring village, which, however, refused to shelter such a person. So he returned 24 hours later, having requisitioned the army. In the exchange that followed, 11 weavers were shot. In 1848, the revolution of the liberals, led by middle-class people, they wanted to establish nation-state, that means common culture, common language, common tradition, and also they demanded parliamentary principles like constitution, freedom of press, freedom of association. In German regions, most of the political associations were middle-class professionals. They decided to vote all German National Party. On 18th May 1848, 831 members were elected. So parliament became dominant by the middle class, who resisted the demands of workers and artisans and consequently lost their support. In the end, troops were called in and the assembly was forced to disband. Monarchs were beginning to realize that the cycles of revolution and repression could only be ended by granting concessions to the liberal nationalist revolutionaries. So they made some changes. Serfdom and bonded labor was abolished, then granted autonomy to the Hungarians. Let's take a short recap. So far we have discussed about age of revolution, revolutionaries in 1830 July Revolution, Greek Revolution, and also we have discussed about Romanticism, national feeling, hunger, hardship and popular revolt, and the revolution of the liberals.